Today, we're going to be talking about how you can rebuild your business post-COVID. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Suky, founder at Professional Selection. I've been in the recruitment business 25, 26 years, had my own business for 20-something of those years. To date, I've recruited in 18 different countries. Alongside with my direct hire practice, I've got a coaching business and training business, and all of this is global for our industry. So what I want to talk about today is going to be very tactical, because I did think about putting together statistics and things like that, but I can't help but think we've had our time to look at statistics. Now it's time to execute. So that's what I want to talk about today. What do you as leaders need to do in order to ensure you have a successful Q3, Q4, and set yourself up for success for 2021? So we're just coming up to 2:30. So what I've also done is, what I find is a lot of people are uncomfortable sharing some of their concerns, stuff that's waking them up at 2 a.m. in a public forum. I'd love you to put it in the chat so everybody else can see that they're not alone with some of those thoughts. However, I appreciate some of you may not want to put some information in the box. So I've put my mobile number up there. It's 905-392-7313. Feel free, if you've got any questions or you need me to touch on something or elaborate on something that I haven't done so, please send me a text message and I will try and respond and incorporate it. But I'm just mindful we have 30 minutes or so. So as I said, I want to stay tactical. I want everybody to leave the conference today with ideas on what they can do, what they can take back into their, hey Alex, yeah, I see you, so that's working. So stay tactical. I want you to be able to take away something from today, from this session, and be able to relate it back to your business. So one of the things I've noticed, most people, for the most part, everybody had a phenomenal Q1. And it doesn't matter where I am, which region I'm in, which country I'm talking to, everybody seems to have had a fantastic Q1. Q2 started off really well, but it was just at that cusp, depending on when your calendar year, what the year is. But the reality of it is, unless you're in the life sciences, healthcare, medical, those types of industries, your business has been impacted. Unfortunately, there are those industries such as hospitality, which really have truly struggled. They've struggled globally. Technology did for just, for lack of a better word, pause until people were able to pivot and understand how they can adapt to work from home. But certainly some of the markets that have been extremely busy fall under that. Life sciences, healthcare, technology, as I said, is busy. So I'm seeing a lot of people pivoting their business. But one thing we did as a team, we also saw was, understandably, COVID hit. None of us saw that coming. I've been through so many recessions, and I know I'm showing my age there, but actually go back to when the job boards were initially coming out. We were supposed to get decimated as an industry then. Then there was something in between, but then we had Y2K, then September the 11th, SARS, 2008. But none of those were like what we're seeing now. So naturally, everybody went into that panic mode. And then some people went into moving forward, adapting, pivoting. Unfortunately, a lot, and I'll stick within our agency space, got paralyzed by fear. So what I've been saying to all my coaching clients right from the get-go is your recovery plan should have started back in March, but the next best time to start it is now. So what I want to talk about is what are some of the things you can do in order to get your business back on track and pivot. So I just want to get my system sorted out here. So one of the first things that you really need to do is have an abundant mindset. And everybody thinks they've got an abundant mindset, but the reality is we all have fears, and fear is there for a reason, okay? But if that fear is keeping you paralyzed and it's making you make decisions from a knee-jerk self-preservation perspective, then that's something you absolutely need to do some work around. I mean, what COVID has absolutely done, it's exhausted all of us. It's exhausted us as business leaders. It's exhausted our staff. It's exhausted the clients. And of course, it's exhausted the candidates. Now, a lot of companies weren't ready to work from home. They had to adapt. But one of the things that it's also done is the team morale, so, i.e. your employees. Suddenly they're working from home. They're in an environment they've not, because typically, for the most part, we're office-based. And most of them don't know how to work from home. They've never had to work from home, so it's a learning curve for them. And what we noticed was those companies, employers that had an abundance mindset, they were managing, or still are for that matter, managing their staff very differently to those that have the scarcity mindset. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. The abundant mindset have allowed their employees to adapt. They've allowed their employees to find the right balance for them, because now on top of that, remember the schools are out, daycare's gone, so people are trying to school their kids, keep their job, and those employers that had that scarcity mindset, that fear mindset, have been really putting pressure on those individuals to work as if they're in the office. So same types of KPIs. And I can give you an example on that one. I had a lady ring me up, really upset because she's fearful of losing her job. She's got young kids and she hasn't got family around her and so forth to help. And she was still being asked to make 60 dials a day. Okay. And it was impossible. She couldn't get her employer to understand that, because the employer was putting pressure on her. Make these calls, you have to do your KPIs. That's an employer that's coming from a scarcity mindset. Because the reality is, what that's done in a number of cases, it's created an environment where the team morale has dropped drastically. Me and the guys, we're talking to people who admit to us that they are getting on their laptops, whether it's team meetings or however people are doing their regroup, and they're there, but that's it. After that, they just don't know what to do, and they're so fearful, so they're not actually executing. And of course, that's creating a vicious cycle. Those companies, employers that have the abundant mindset, and the reason I'm sharing this is we're still going to be working from home for probably at least the next 3-6 months. So it's absolutely something you need to be thinking about right now, is how are you going to help your teams? The reality is, if you're putting that much pressure on them, the economy is picking back up, agencies are starting to hire, companies are starting to hire. When your competitors are calling your employees, because trust me, they are, your employee is going to take that call. That's going to damage your business, because you're going to lose a valuable resource. So spend some time thinking about your own mindset. And if you are coming from a place of fear, that's okay, right? The first thing is recognizing it and then trying to understand, well, what is your fear? Because once you've understand what that fear is, you're able to do something about it. Okay. So if I stick with the example, because I could go on for hours on this, but if I stick with the example of your internal employees, they're exhausted, the morale is down. Now, if you're creating an environment where they feel comfortable, they feel safe coming to you and saying, I'm struggling. If they feel safe coming to you saying that, and you are creating an environment for them where they're able to do that without judgment, without fear of losing their jobs, and so forth, that's going to pay dividends in your business, because that allows you as a business owner to pivot, change what you're thinking, adapt your plan. So again, let me give you an example. I was speaking to a gentleman yesterday who's got his own business here, and he was saying that one of his team members had admitted she's really struggling and she needs time out. She needs time off, personal reasons and so forth. So my advice to him was, she's been honest, let her do that. Now that you know, you can now make alternative arrangements for her book of business, her desk, to get coverage, rather than you think there's coverage there when there's not. So that abundant mindset is so important. And just before I move on from that, I think the other piece that staying within abundance is, guys, stop worrying about what your competitors are doing. The energy you're burning on what your competitors are doing is energy you can be investing in your business. And again, that's going to come from that abundant mindset or scarcity mindset. Let your competitors do whatever it is they're doing. Let them say what they're doing. Let them chart whatever it is. You focus on your business, because whilst you're focusing on your competitor, you're not focusing on your business. Whilst you're not focused on your business, you're not focusing on your clients. Guess who's focusing on your clients? The competitor that's not worrying about you. So abundant mindset is absolutely one of the places that you really need to start. And of course, if anybody's got any thoughts, comments, put them in the chat box here. But the other piece I want to spend some time talking about is client ownership, client and candidate ownership. Now, this one is absolutely huge. Unfortunately, there are salespeople right now in our industry, here in Toronto, here in Canada, that are feeling as if they're being cheated. Okay, so let me explain. Typically, how our industry works, we all know base salaries are okay, but we're salespeople for the most part. We're in a commissioned role. Base salary pays our mortgage, our basic costs, but it's the commissions that pay for the cars, the holidays, and so forth. And our contracts, our employment contracts, are designed around client candidate ownership. And we all know it takes a long time to nurture a client and secure a deal and so forth, as well as a candidate if you're on a split desk model. And the truth of the matter is, this applies to both the temporary side and the permanent side. What's happening is everybody has client ownership. So let's stick with the client part for now. And that tends to be 3, 6, 12 months. In our business, I'm going to use my business as an example. We have a 3-month candidate ownership. So a client, if you've been nurturing a client, you're working with a client, my expectation is that you have moved that account forward. Same with the candidate side, because we are predominantly headhunting. So moving that relationship forward. But what's happened is with COVID, technically speaking, nobody was hiring, so people aren't making sales calls. So now that those clients are beginning to come back, whose account should that be? Should it go back to that original salesperson? Should it become a house account? Should it go to somebody else in the team? And I'm going to actually give you a real example here. And this was what prompted me to actually put this into the presentation today. An individual, pure 100% sales role. So got his relationships, been nurturing those relationships. And during work from home and COVID, he's kept his calls going and so forth. Fair enough, he did not log something in the system, so I will give you full disclosure on that. However, the client rung in on the main number. It got diverted to him, and I don't know how the calls are distributed, but it ended up on a different salesperson's desk. Because he hadn't logged the last contact he'd had with him, he lost that account. And if I remember correctly, it's starting off on about 25 temps, if I remember correctly, was what it started. So this is significant money for him. And when the money wasn't allocated to him, i.e. the commissions didn't come through, that's when he realized, oh, there's something's gone on here. And he was told, no, sorry, you're not getting that commission. The commission is staying as house. What's happened in that particular case, that individual rung one of the competitors that had been calling him. He took the call. And as far as I know, he's leaving. So this particular company, in my opinion, has potentially been short-sighted, because what they've done is they've lost a great salesperson, and we all know people buy from people. So, and I'm not suggesting he's going to be taking his clients and so forth, but we know that his relationships will eventually follow him. So if you think about it from when you're hiring, you're always looking to see, okay, well, what relationships does this person have? And it doesn't matter what vertical they're working in, the good old book of business, so to speak. So think of it like this. Everybody is exhausted. We've, especially in the commission-based roles, people have not had the level of income they were expecting. They've still got their commitments, car payments, mortgages, everything else. And now for an employer to do that to them, the message it sends, not only in this case, but the message it sends to everybody else in the team. Right now is a time when you need to be retaining your staff. I just want to, I know somebody's just messaged me a question, so I just want to give me 2 ticks. I want to read it and see if it's something that we can, oh, it's not connecting. Give me 1 second. Okay, so that's happening to us. Okay, so in this particular case, actually, I might as well just read the message out. I've got exactly this issue. A member of our team has worked really hard throughout COVID on reduced pay, and I feel they should be getting commission on new work. But our cash flow is still very variable, so trying to work out how to ensure they are appropriately remunerated without leaving their position vulnerable longer term if we need to cut costs. Okay, that's a fair point. That absolutely is a fair point. So if I've understood this correctly, if paying those commissions now and taking up a large chunk of revenue out of the cash flow could potentially leave a business vulnerable a month, 2 months down the road, what should you do in that case? That's a really difficult one, because ultimately they've earned their commissions and that is their money. So in this case, one of the things I would suggest you do Without, whichever way you go, you have to communicate it. So even if in the example I gave you, that you're not going to pay those commissions, that should be communicated. That's just poor leadership when you don't communicate that. But as in this case, the example this lady's giving me, I would, before having that conversation with them, without knowing all the details, my suggestion to you, my recommendation to you is ask yourself this: can I pay something? Can I? So, for example, I'm just going to use a hypothetical number. Say it's $6,000 because it's a nice round figure. Could you potentially, instead of paying it out in one lump sum, could you pay it out in 3 installments, maybe 3 pay periods? So what I would suggest is sit down with your finance person and do those projections, because the reality is when you go to your employee and talk about this, you need to know what the business can do. And I'm sure if everything else is equal, you go to your employee and you explain why you'd like to put in a different payment plan. Most people are going to understand that. Now, it could be that you've got somebody that is a single mom, single dad, so that money is really, really important. That's different. But certainly I would look to be having those kind of conversations. Hope that answers your question. Feel free to ping me afterwards if you want to talk further on it. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move through the last part. So we've covered the abundant mindset. We've talked about cash flow and the employee part of it. The final third piece that I think you need to be doing right now is stop chasing the invoice. A lot of us, we have heavy KPIs. We're expecting our guys. We want them to bring in revenue today because we've still got bills to pay. I'm not denying that for a second. However, as I said earlier, your clients are exhausted as well. So right now, and especially if you haven't kept in touch with your clients, and you haven't been making those sales calls, how would you feel if nobody had rung you up for the last 4 months, and suddenly now that you are maybe looking for a new phone system, for argument's sake, suddenly you're being bombarded with people saying, hey, I see you're looking for a phone system. Then they're not going to want to do business with you. They're going to be doing business with the people that have been talking to them during the time where they haven't got business to give you. So don't focus on that invoice. Focus on what your client needs. Focus on what your candidate is looking for, because if you look after those 2 pieces, the invoice is going to look after itself. And the reality is, when you chased just the invoice, the client smells desperation. If your client is smelling desperation, what are they going to do to you? They're going to try and reduce the fees. Quite rightly, that's that they're in business, right? So they want everything at the best price that they can possibly get. And if you're smelling that, if you're coming across and they're smelling that desperation, it's going to make you trying to hold your fees a lot more difficult. So focus on that value part for your clients. Now, again, I'm conscious of time, but there's a whole process behind that, because unfortunately, we've been in an environment, in a strong economy where there has been a talent shortage. Well, things have flipped now. So clients are going to want to work with, and candidates for that matter, are going to want to work with those recruiters that are listening to what they want, not filling an order, but helping them. Because they don't care whether you fill an order or not. They don't care whether you get that invoice. They care about whether they get the job and they're able to feed their family, put roofs over their heads, and meet whatever their motivators are. So ultimately, if they've got yourself not really listening, just trying to put a round peg in a square hole and just saying, go to what, this is the job, go, this is the pay rate, and you're not listening to what they're saying, and then they've got a recruiter that is doing that, that's the person they're going to go to, the person they're gelling with. As I said, same with the client side. They're going to try and get you to reduce your rates. They're going to, for lack of a better word, pitch you against some of your competitors. We all know those clients that say, yep, we've got 4 other agencies working on it, and they're working, I'm going to use a perms example here, they're working on it at 10%. Walk away from that business. Walk away from that business. That is not, that is them being desperate to just get everybody working on a roll, and you are going to burn some valuable time and energy on an account like that. Whereas if you're then upselling that, so even if you have that scenario and you have an opportunity to sell, and you're coming with an abundant mindset, so and you're focusing on what the client wants, how that hire with the client is going to solve a client's problem, the chances of you being able to command higher fees have just shot up. Because now they're engaging a service, thereby the value you're bringing is totally different to the value somebody else is bringing. So that's some of the things that you need to really be thinking about, that client focus, that candidate focus. Stop chasing the invoice. The money is going to come. For no ifs and buts about it, you look after those two, the money will naturally come. Again, we don't have enough time to go into the tactics behind that, but I just want to leave everybody with food for thought and stuff that they could go back and implement. The other part, sorry, it's just sent me a message. What happens when a client taken account? Okay, fair point. And I'm sure that's going to happen. So the message is, what happens when you've presented a candidate? So you've got the candidate ownership, and the client's taken them, has hired them. Now, I'm assuming you have in your terms, you have candidate ownership and representation, beg your pardon, is a better word. Most people have a 12-month representation, certainly on the perm side. Let's just be clear, it's on the perm side, it's typically a 12-month. I haven't seen many past the 12 months, but 12 months is typically what it seems to be. Doesn't matter whether if you represented that candidate, your client has taken them, and I'm going to use the word behind your back, they owe you your invoice. Legally, they are obliged to pay your invoice. And again, without knowing all the details of this one, I would say to you, pursue that, get your invoice, because it's hard work. You've earned that invoice. You've spent money, time engaging that candidate. But the other food for thought I want to leave you with in this particular scenario, you don't want to work with that client again. If that is, to me, that's a moral issue. That is, they are intentionally misleading you. They are stealing from you, I guess, is another way to look at it. So again, as you're rebuilding your business, ask yourself this: why would I want to do repeat business with this client? Right? Now, if it's an oversight and you weren't aware of it, beg your pardon, they weren't aware of it and stuff like that, that's a conversation. But if it is from your message, it sounds intentional, I would certainly bring your terms up to them, remind them of the terms. If they're not prepared to pay, I would absolutely say take it legal, because here's the thing, no other business, you can't walk into an Apple store and say, I looked at this phone 3 weeks ago, I didn't buy it then, now I'm going to take it. Same thing applies here. And at the same time, as I said, think to yourself, do I still want to work with this client? And if it was something intentional and you do decide to continue working with this client, I'm going to bring you back to what I said at the beginning. Are you choosing to work with that client because it's scarcity mindset, or is there something else behind it? But again, if you want to give me a shout later, we can chat through it. So in closing, to sum it all up, abundant mindset. Don't work from a scarcity mindset. The market absolutely is back. Is it back the same way it was January, depending on what vertical you're in? No, but it's coming. It has come back. Here's an opportunity. I'm dealing with a lot of clients that are now pivoting their business into other verticals. So that's an option open to you guys. But you have to have that abundance mindset in order to be able to execute and capture the moment. Stop worrying about your competitors. Let your competitors worry about you. Internally, look at how you're managing your staff. They're already exhausted. Don't do anything that's going to exhaust them any further. There's a difference between exhausting them in a oh my God, we're busy sense, but I'm talking more so you coming from that scarcity mindset and putting pressure on them. The market is picking up, you will start losing talent. Commissions was the example I gave, but I'm sure there's plenty of other bits that it's relevant to. If your conditions of employment, contract, and what have you does say it's from date of last invoice, I encourage you to consider resetting the clock to March the 1st or something like that. If you are in a position where cash flow is extremely tight, and if you do pay out a large commission check, it could potentially leave the business weaker, vulnerable is a better word. Then I would encourage you to think of what you can do and talk to your employees before the situation arises. Most people are going to understand. And again, if they say that they can't afford to wait because of their personal situation, that's different. So that's one thing I would say on that. And last but not least, focus on your client, focus on your candidate. The invoice will follow. You do those two things, the invoice is going to follow. You focus on just the invoice, the client's going to smell the desperation, and you're either going to get knocked down on price, or they're just going to give you that, and they're going to give the order to 3-4 other people that have rung up, and they've sensed the desperation. So work smarter, guys. As an industry, we have to value ourselves. If we don't value ourselves, we can't expect others to do that. On that note, what I will say is what I've done is, if you drop me an email or go to our website, professionalselection.com/apply, that'll take you into my calendar. What I've done is, over the next week or so, I've freed up some slots for anybody that's been here today. If they want, and I've opened up an hour-long slots, I'm happy to talk to anybody that just needs to talk through some ideas, and just break through and put together a plan for the next 3-6 months. Happy to do that. Just use that link. That's just for the conference here today. And me or one of the guys, it'll take you straight into our calendars, and we're happy to help. But as always, if anybody's got any questions right now, feel free to put them in the chat box there, or send me an email. So I hope you guys have found today of value, and I've given you something to think about. I intentionally wanted us to stay really tactful. Barbs, thank you so much again. Georgia said, absolutely, I'm glad. Brilliant. My idea today, my aim of today was tactical. We don't have time to be sitting there waiting for something to happen. We have to make it happen. We have to own that, and we have to start internally with ourselves. Truth of the matter is, as business owners, we're exhausted as well. But we have a duty, obligation to our teams, as in our staff, to ensure that we put our best foot forward, and every decision we're making collectively is for the benefit of the business. So feel free to reach out to me. I hope I've given you guys something to think about, something to mull over. Actually, before I go, I'm going to make one suggestion. There's a book called The 10X Rule. Grant Candon, I think his name is, but it's the 10X Rule. That's a phenomenal book. I recommend that to every single one of my coaching clients. It's a great way to start thinking bigger. It helps you with the mindset. It gives you an idea of how much time and energy you're going to have to invest to achieve the goal that you want. It's a brilliant book. Read it. It's well worth the read. So anyhow, guys, thank you ever so much for taking time out today. Hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free to send me an email. Thanks a lot, guys.